We'll get there. Hold on.
You're good. You're good. So yeah, we were last.
I get confused between this and the book club, and I'm like, oh, okay, in the book club. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Matthew chapter 17, we had Jesus talking about, having the faith of a mustard seed.
Yes.
And then we also had that strange story of the first time Jesus got asked about, actually Peter gets asked about Jesus's tax records, and Jesus has a fish have some gold coin to be able to pay the taxes. So it's in that Jesus is done with some teaching, and remember chapter 17 had begun with Jesus transfiguring and bringing the disciples up the mountain, and now they were back down and in the muck and the challenges of everyday life. And so we'll see in chapter 18, 18 is mostly focused on the concept of forgiveness and reconciliation. And it's really about, all right, how do we do this life of faith together? And what role does forgiveness, accountability, and reconciliation have in our communities? So we're not going to cover a lot of territory, but I think there's some really, really rich stuff in here today. Would somebody be willing to read Matthew chapter 18, verses 1 through 5?
I will.
Thanks.
At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" He called a little child to him and placed the child among them. And he said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me."
Thank you. Thank you. So here we go. We have Jesus and the disciples. What is it with, it starts with the whole thing that sets them up is the disciples' question of who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. What is it with the disciples? It almost feels like a preoccupation. They're always jockeying and wondering who's the best, who's the greatest. What do you think that's about? Why? What's the why behind all of this? Behind their questions?
Well, I don't know if they're questioning among the disciple. I don't know along who is the greatest among us, or is he are they trying to figure out, well, they probably don't even know that, I think the whole God the Father, all of that is really confusing to all of us.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're trying to figure out, they know that Jesus is God's son, and so I don't know. I don't really know what they're trying to, or is it just that who's going to sit at your right hand question, which of us is the best? I don't
Yeah, I don't know whether it's a jockeying for position, that they're wanting to see who has the position of power within Jesus's circle, or if this is about what God's kingdom looks like and how to best live into that.
Well, like the Mormons, and I don't even know if they use this, the Mormons have different levels of heaven that you can be in. And so, and that, I don't know. I don't know if they're trying to figure that out too. And
I think you're kind of hitting on something, because I think their question is so telling that the disciples expect God's kingdom to work like so many other areas of our life. Like, think about how much of our life is a hierarchical structure. So much of the systems that we're in, I mean, especially in America, you know, we always have this idea of, you know, climbing the corporate ladder and going above your station, and it's the rags to riches story. It's always this like, all right, how do I grow? How do I get better? How do I, you know, self-improvement and get to that next level? And I feel like the disciples, their questions coming from that sense, assuming that God works that way too. Have you ever had a time where either you were kind of either jockeying for position or a situation where you either became very aware of a hierarchical situation that you didn't realize you were in, or were able to create a space where there wasn't a hierarchy, where it was surprisingly anti, you know, growth and competition situation?
I think they want to know, where do I stand in this, and who's in charge of what? I'm not sure.
Did you ever find, Lyle, either in teaching or in real estate, was there hierarchy? Was there competition? Was there some sort of a sense of?
Not so much in real estate, I didn't see it, but I think in most any job there is. I could see it more at State Farm, because you definitely had a chart as to who was over what level you were on and so forth. You were second level management or first level peon.
Yeah.
And the fire department had a definite hierarchy, rank and position and stuff like that. I mean, wasn't a bad thing necessarily, but it was definitely that type of environment.
And I could definitely see for like the firefighters, you know, you need to know who the chief is, because you need to know who's directing traffic and, you know, ordering where you fit in the system.
You need to know who to blame.
Say what to.
Yeah. So what do you think? So what is Jesus saying in this? If he's saying that the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, if he brings a child and shows them a child, and he says to become like children, what do you think? What do you mean? What do you think he means? I mean, this is one of those popular stories, right? But it's also one of those that, like, Jesus presents a really complex teaching in saying become childlike. I just dropped off Finn at preschool, and it took us like 45 minutes to get out the door because he couldn't find his shoes. And then, you know, we were leaving and I was like, "You brushed your teeth, right?" "Oh, no." And then I went into the bathroom about 5 minutes after he was supposed to be brushing his teeth, and I said, "Okay, you ready to go?" He's like, "Oh, I need to brush my teeth." And I'm like, "What have you been doing?" And then he brushed his teeth. Then we got out the door and I said, "Where are your mittens?" "I left them in the bathroom." "Okay, do you want to go back and get them?" Yeah. So, you know, does Jesus mean that we need to be kind of forgetful, or what does he mean by becoming childlike?
Well, I think children are they're taught the hierarchy and the better than, and I think just as a child, they're very accepting of each other, and, you know, even the race issue and all that. And then they're taught that we have more than they do, or we're, you know, I think it's just, but I think, you know, they're very open and accepting exacting by nature, and really don't care, I think, until it's really kind of taught to them who's got more, who's better than they are, and they don't really understand that concept of better than until it's kind of modeled to them, I think.
Even
Good.
though we don't teach them that somebody else is better than they are, it doesn't take long for society to take over and show them how to do how
And
that.
show that. Exactly.
How else do you think? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think throughout Jesus' ministry, he tried to, or not tried, but he told his disciples and other followers that the least shall be the greatest, and and kind of flipped the script, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I, to me, this is saying a child is someone who is accustomed to, and is okay with taking instruction and being told when and where and what for, and that in the kingdom of heaven, you need to be willing to follow the leader. The leader being Jesus, like a child, and not, like Diane was saying, not be concerned so much with the hierarchy.
I like that idea of like kind of being malleable, like being open
right.
to growth and to learning. I think so often as adults, I don't know if you can remember a time in your life, but I feel like everybody has that moment where at some point you go from being the one who's learning and growing and the learner in the situation to being seen as like the expert or the teacher or the adult in the room. And sometimes it can really catch you off guard about like when that shift happens. I don't know, can anybody think of a moment like that of when, because I feel like as that adult, that teacher, that expert, like all of a sudden you go from being the one who is learning and taking in guidance to then all of a sudden someone looking to you for the answers or expecting you to know everything. Have you ever experienced anything like that? Or what does that look like in your life?
Tried to decide at what age things changed, but I know in my own life, when I was, say under 8 years old, I thought my parents knew everything. By the time I was 10 or 11, I thought they knew nothing. And then when I turned 21, I thought, I wonder how they got so smart again.
Yeah, so those seasons of being open to growth. Yeah. I like that, Lyle.
I think another thing that kids are really good at forgiving. They don't hold grudges very often. If somebody upsets them, like 10 minutes later, they're back playing again together. And so they're much more able to do that, I think, than some adults.
Yeah. And kids have that, like, I don't know about you, like I feel like kids have that moment of like they breathe justice and righteousness. You know, if something is unfair or if something is wrong, they're going to let you know it. They are not going to compromise about it, you know, and they're going to be ready to fight for their thing that they believe in. That's not fair. That's, you know. Hi, Julie.
Hello.
You know, that they'll that they have a sense of right and wrong, and that they don't have as many compromises and, well, that's just kind of the way the world works, you know, that they're going to go out and get it. I think another thing that, you know, Jesus expressly names humility. And I think part of that humility is in knowing that we have a dependence on God, like a child has a dependence on a parent. They start off knowing that everything that they need comes from outside of themselves. You know, I'm sure any mothers, I don't know why dads don't, no matter what, I feel like Caitlin gets more moms than I get dads. You know what I mean? Like, the kids always ask for Caitlin, even if I'm the one that will do it for them. It's always mom, mom, mom. And so
That's not always a good thing. So don't take that as a compliment. You know, I think about this story and how we all need to realize, you know, I'm thinking about the first, they always respond, you know, during the COVID, we're talking about the heroes and the first responders. And I always, and some of them did make a point to note this, but, you know, I think about, what about those custodians that are having to clean those rooms? And, you know, what about those, the cafeteria workers that are keeping but, you know, they're all heroes, and they're all, you see the doctors and the nurses doing, you know, but there are so many times there's so many other people. I mean, I'm an administrative assistant. She used to hate it because I'd go, oh, I'm just the secretary. But I know that office can't work without me. I keep the office going. But I don't get the glory. The researchers get all, you know, they get all the recognition. So I think that's part of it, is that we need to. My dad was a colonel in the Air Force, and when you were talking about hierarchy, I mean, it was against the rules to fraternize with the, you know, NCOs. And but I was never taught to be rank conscious, because he was a squadron commander at one point, and he took some of the airmen, he would take them fishing, and he would get not reprimanded, but that was definitely frowned upon to do that, because you're not supposed to do that. But I kind of see him doing, you know, not making himself lower, but, you know, kind of putting himself on that level of, you know, hey guys, let's go. And then they have a big fish fry, everybody together when they got home. And so that was kind of modeled to me to understand that we all have a position. We all have a job to do in this world. And, you know.
I think that's such a great transition, because I was going to ask, you know, do you know anyone in your life that exhibits that kind of childlikeness? And so I think that's a great example. And you made me think of, I never got to meet him personally, but Caitlin's grandfather, who was a state Supreme Court justice in Illinois. Yeah, super bigwig, but he always lived in small town Illinois on a tiny farmhouse. He and his wife would always garden, and twice a year they'd have the interns and the clerks over to their house for a picnic, and he'd want to get to know about them and their interests and their backgrounds, and really took an intentional act to kind of get rid of that mystique of the hierarchy. Yeah. Who else, who in your life can you think of has that childlike in some way or other, whether we're talking about the humility, the capacity for learning and growth, the joy, the forgiveness? Who do you know, or who have you experienced that childlikeness from?
I don't know if this answers your questions, and admittedly, I was distracted by a message that popped up from work.
We multitask on Wednesday mornings.
Hey, life happens, you know, and we bring life into it. We take our wisdom out into life, so this is perfect. That's fine.
But when I think of this, when I read this passage, I think of where I work. I work, I mean, obviously the museum is part of the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. And within the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, it is very hierarchical. If you have, the more letters you have behind the name, the more important you are.
Definitely.
But positioned within this world of PhDs and academia and that kind of thing, at the museum, there are 3 of us on the museum team who have PhDs. The director is a JD and used to work for the state attorney. But we are all kind of equal within the museum, and we don't, no one gets caught up in that academic perspective. You know, Leslie, who is the executive director,
We'll empty the dishwasher.
often empties the dishwasher, wipes the tables in the break room. Nobody is more important than the other person. We're all just a team. And I think that is kind of what Jesus is trying to tell his disciples, that, you know, it's not about position, it's about relationship.
Mhm.
And
True.
even if you're not a child, if you welcome a child, you welcome me. So even if you're not the PhD, if you know, or even if you're not the person with just a master's, I mean a bachelor's, and you welcome that person, you know, it's just kind of that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. That's good. I think of I have a friend, Allison. We went to seminary together, and she runs a mission station down in Dallas Fort Worth. And she is one of the most, in the best way, childlike I can think of. You know, she's got her, you know, her master's of divinity from Vanderbilt, and she's kind of an expert when it comes to mission training and children's ministries. But she is the first to laugh and to be silly. She is always losing stuff, but has always just kind of accepted. It's always like, when the universe is ready for me to have it again, it will come back to me. She isn't threatened by other people helping or asking for help. I think so many of us feel like we have to do things on our own to show that we can. And she has no problem just saying, hey, can you help me with this? I don't know what I'm doing, and to be okay with that. And she just laughs and plays with kids, or tries to engage adults that way, because she sees life as a joy and something fun to experience, and not just a task to get through. Yeah, for me, she's one of those childlike people. So what does it mean to, Jesus says, so the whole point of this metaphor that Jesus uses, he says, you know, whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. What does that mean, and how do you do that in your life? Or how could you do that more in your life?
I think kind of what we've been talking about thinking you're better than others and keeping humble and accepting in the relationships, it kind of, to me, ties into that.
Good. What else?
Well, kind of back when you were talking about your friend, I think just finding joy in little things. So
Yeah, finding joy in little things. And I don't know about you, I feel like embracing mystery is an important thing. Like, Finn is convinced, like, so, you know, our dog Jack died last almost a year ago. But the boys still, every now and again, will talk to him. Finn is convinced that for like the last week, every night at midnight, he says at midnight, has to be at midnight, Jack comes to him in his dreams and has left a treasure map. And so Finn and Isaac have worked together in creating a treasure map of all these treasures Jack has left for them. And so like every day when I come home, there's some sort of like, Finn will be like, Dad, we went and we followed the treasure map and we found something that Jack left for us. And he'll show me and it'll be like a Hot Wheels that like it's been under the couch cushion and it's theirs. It had been there before and I knew it was there. But to them, it's like, no, that's Jack. Jack left it for us and it's magical and it's new. And so I've just been like embracing that mystery and wonder. And, you know, in our backyard, apparently our backyard is full of dinosaur fossils. And so, you know, we're always digging up holes and getting out our paleontologist toothbrush and checking because we're pretty sure it's a Spinosaurus. You know, all kinds of things like that. Yeah, so for me, I'm really lucky because I feel like it's easy for me to keep that welcoming children with kids in my life. I'm always impressed for people who don't have immediate access to children in their life and how they keep that spirit. You know, that to me is a hard lesson to learn. How do you keep that spirit even when you don't have direct access?
Lyle, I've always seen you as kind of along that line because you have a very good, you've always had a good connection with youth and kids and stuff, and I've always been impressed with that.
Well, I think it's part of my philosophy is I might grow old, but I don't ever want to grow up. Because wonder a child is really something to see. And they don't, you know, your imagination, sometimes it's not always imagination. Sometimes it's insight if you look at it the right way. And I don't know, I've just always grew up with nieces and nephews that were only 6 years younger than I was. So in many ways, they're more like brothers and sisters than they are my nieces and nephews. So my oldest niece is 72 and has great grandchildren. So, but it's just. But I remember, I always tell her once, I said, "No, you're not smart. I remember changing your diapers." My sister had a blue baby, and so I would have to be over there sometimes, because sometimes I would sit and hold the oxygen mask over her face when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old. And then sometimes I've changed a lot of diapers. I've folded a lot of cloth diapers. I've pinned diapers and all this stuff. So even though I've never had children of my own, I've been surrounded by children. Some of my great nieces and nephews come to me and talk to me. Some of them are afraid of me. So you just have to accept them on their level where they are.
Man, I think that's a great.
You read these things about what we think a child's imagination is. I think of some of the Heaven Can Wait type books where people have the little kid that out in Sydney or where it was that died and went to heaven and came back and told folks all about grandpa he had never known in life and his little sister that he didn't even know she was born. And she was upset with her parents because they never gave her a name and he wanted to give her a name. And so, you know, how much is it imagination? How much is the wisdom of a child? I don't know.
I love that. Celebrating the wisdom of. That's good. Well, so so we're going to continue just a little bit further, and because Jesus goes on, and this is for me one of those tricky texts. So let's hold on to that beautiful, happy, joyful spirit. As would somebody be willing to read verses 6 through 10?
I can.
Thanks, Kathy.
But if anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. Woe to the world because of the things that cause people to sin. Such things must come, but woe to the man through whom they come. If your hand or your foot causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life maimed or crippled than to have 2 hands or 2 feet and be thrown into eternal fire. And if your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better. Just a second. It is better for you to enter life with 1 eye than to have 2 eyes and be thrown into the fire of hell. See that you do not look down on one of these little ones, for I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven.
Woo, upper. All right, thank you. So what are some reactions? Why would Jesus say this? What is he saying?
Well, that first part, he goes kind of to extreme on illustrating this point, but the point being, if you cause someone to fall from their faith, that is huge. That's serious, and it's a warning. Don't do that. Take your own or put your own ambitions or whatever you want to call it ahead, and cause someone to fall away. To me, that I think that's something that is really good to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I think to echo that, I think Jesus is noting that while the kingdom of God functions so that those who are childlike are at the top, I think he recognizes and is naming the very, very real challenges to the actual kids in his community. Not only are children dependent, but children are the most vulnerable. Especially in Jesus's world. With Monday being Labor Day, we talked a little bit about that with Isaac and Finn, and they couldn't believe that, as recent as 100 years ago, kids their age would be working in factories. And in some places in the world, kids are. And that thankfully we have protective laws to protect children. Thankfully, we have things like protective laws to protect children from abuse and from assault. And even then, we know that things happen. And I think Jesus is stressing, while everyone is worthy of love and no one should be a stumbling block to anyone else, I think he really is saying, how dare you take advantage of the least of these? I think, too, I was, as you were talking about it, Dan, I was thinking about after, because I've worked with youth in the past, and thankfully we're seeing this going away, this trend. But for a while in Christianity, there were these camps for kids who were questioning or identifying as LGBTQ, and conversion therapy and these different ideas of, you're just wrong, you need to change, you're not being faithful. We're taking advantage of that childlikeness, and telling kids that a part of who they were was ugly and wrong. And unredeemable. And I can't, I see Jesus's righteous anger in this. And I think that's okay. Sometimes you need to be fierce to protect. This is Jesus's mama bear coming out, I think, a little bit. So that's kind of that first part. What's the verses 8 through 10? What's that all about?
Well, let's see this passage moving from, he's starting with a little child and talking about not causing the child to stumble. And then he says, woe to the world that caused people to stumble. So when you see the word people, you think more adults. And then it moves to individual. So I think it's kind of an all-encompassing, the children out there, the lower people in your community, all people in your community, down to yourself. Whatever is causing you to, causing them or you to disengage with God, cut it away, get rid of it.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good awareness. That's really, really good that while Jesus does start with children, he's talking about just the stumbling blocks of the world, those things that divide us from one another.
And I think too, it's interesting, and I never really caught this before. I've read this passage many times, but I like the line that says, such things must come. So Jesus recognizes that it's going to happen, but here's how you respond to it when it does happen.
Yeah. And he does it a few times, he names that it will happen. Later, if you watched worship on Sunday, I made that very point about verses 15 through 20 that we'll get to next week. That these things are going to happen. But how do we reconcile, and what does wholeness look like in that? Absolutely, really great point.
I think we have to be so keenly aware of who we are in contact with and what things do cause people to stumble, either believers or non-believers. And I used to use this. I've said before, we grew up Southern Baptist, and I mean, you don't drink anything, anything. Alcoholic, obviously. But I can remember we were in Texas, and I started, we were friends with another couple, and after church on Sunday nights, because Southern Baptists go to church on Sunday nights, we started just being a little freer with our religion, and we were, this friend of mine, Sharon, and I would go to the grocery store, and we would get one of those, boxes of wines, those cheap things. And we would, go back to their house and just with the kids, and they had a pool, we'd swim, and we just didn't think anything about it. I mean, it was going against what I believed in, but I was like, hey, I can drink. It's not a sin. It's not a sin to drink. Well, we were checking out one day, and we had always gone to the same checker. It was just a young kid that and he said, hey ladies, what you doing? And we said, oh, we just got back from church. And he said, yeah, right. I mean, and it just was the biggest, I just was like, oh my gosh, what? And of course I attributed it to the drinking of, oh my gosh, I really am sinning. And I've come a long ways in my belief about drinking, but it just made me realize what kind of influence we were having him, because in the South, and people are so, I mean, they equate those two, that you don't drink if you're Southern Baptist for sure. And it just, even though there was nothing wrong with what we were doing, it was an influence. And so then we kind of changed tunes, and
They went to another grocery store.
We went to another grocery store. another checker. But no, but then we did try to start witnessing to him more and started inviting him to church things and just having a different kind of relationship with him than, because it didn't matter if it was wrong, right or wrong, if what we were doing was fine. To him, it was a somewhat of a stumbling block because he didn't quite understand it. And I used to tell youth, when I taught youth, I grew up knowing a can of beer. I was taught that was terrible. You should not do that. But my point to them was, you need to think about what is that, what's that example doing to somebody else, either believer. And I think in all our daily lives, you have to think about things that cause people to stumble or cause them to rethink their relationship with God or who God is or any of that. Even though it may not be wrong for you, it could be for somebody else, and you need to be respectful of that. And I think it's a fine line. I mean, it's really a fine line you have to work with.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good example. And I think what I take away from what you said is that you just have to be aware, maybe not even so much what something is to you, but to try to be sensitive and have empathy to how others might perceive. And I think about that there could be so many things that I never thought about, like when Amy and Trevin Fricky started coming to the church, and they brought Liberty, who has significant challenges. And I hadn't ever thought about how difficult our space and the pacing of worship and how that must be a challenge, or even things that I hadn't thought about that are great about our building, like the fact that we don't have stairs. So mobility becomes a lot more accessible. I've served churches that have like the high Gothic steeples, and some people really love that. And some people also find that to be one of those stumbling blocks, that's a scary, unsafe space just because it has that kind of churchy feel to it. And to be aware that there are so many things, and it doesn't make any of those things necessarily bad, but how do we learn to try and become aware of what we're doing, how it affects others? Yeah. To me, that's sorry, go ahead, Dan.
I'll finish up if you're.
Oh, I was just going to say, to me, that's one of the redeeming parts, because I look at this like verses 8 through 10, and it just seems so violent imagery, and it just seems so truly one of those black and white things. But I feel like when we can get to the point of learning to be empathetic and be compassionate for how other people perceive things, to me, that's a redeeming way to be able to see this text.
I was just looking at this section, and mine has a little footnote that when it says whatever it is that causes you to sin, the Greek causes you to stumble. And I like that because, and I kind of wonder if Jesus was trying to get them away from the idea of set rules, set items that, like we were saying, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. And more along the lines of, if it causes you to stumble in your faith or your relationship with God, then get rid of it. He's kind of maybe trying to change their outlook a little bit, get them away from such a set rule, because he the whole law and commandments and stuff.
Yeah,
I agree. Stumble and fall, and we can fall from grace. But Jesus is saying if you stumble, you get back up and keep going. So I think that it's a softening of things, but yet all this other stuff, I don't think he's really talking about this gross mutilation. It sounds like self-mutilation, but I think he's really saying, stop doing whatever it is that's keeping you from God. And I don't know. I know my dad had his voice box removed when he was like 55 years old, and people would say, "Oh, that's so terrible." And my dad quickly learned to talk him through a building process, and he would say, "But some of the things that you have are much worse than what I have." But I remember one guy was a friend. He came out to the farm right after he got back from the hospital from surgery, and Dad was using a magic slate to write notes and what he had at the time, and he would grab the slate right back to him, and Dad would say, "I can hear, I just can't speak." But this guy just thought it was so terrible. But within 2 weeks, that guy was found to be full of cancer and died. And he just didn't realize that he was much worse off than what my dad was. Because my dad lived for 13, 14 years after he had his voice box removed. So
Yeah.
it's just to think of it in terms of, it's instead of being self-mutilation, think of it as get rid of the things that keep you from God.
Exactly.
I love that. And I think to be aware that it's going to be different for each of us. And that Jesus is really trying to get us to safeguard ourselves, and as much as we can, safeguard for others around us, to help our witness, to help our community. Absolutely. So as we're kind of winding down in our time, what are some takeaways? What did you see today? What did you hear? What connected with you?
Well, I think it's not as much stumbling, but like Lyle was saying, things that are keeping us from God or a deeper relationship with Him. I know we've fallen into the quarantine, watch TV, just sit on the couch, and we binged all kinds of shows that we've never watched before, and I was like, we've said this, and we're doing more of it with the book club. We're going a different direction, but it's like if we would just turn that TV off for that hour that we're watching, we want to. Oh, we've never watched Modern Family. Let's start this one. Oh, we've never, we turn the TV off and, either get the Bible out and do a little old-fashioned Bible study, or, just, I think we need to look for ways that we're causing ourselves either to stumble or not to, that we've had 6 months of, my gosh, we could have done so much with this time.
You guys did redecorate a house and move, though.
We did do that. We did do that. So, I just think we need to find those things on, that TV can be our stumbling block sometimes.
That is true. That is true. Although I will affirm, you should totally watch all of Modern Family.
Okay.
So good.
Well, you got us into Queer Eye, but they're over right now. So.
I know. Come on. Yeah.
Go figure. Our straight preacher had to get us to watch Queer Eye. So
I know. Caitlin got me started on Ozark last night.
No, we haven't done that one.
That was dark. It was dark. In fact, I was like, that's weird, because usually I'm the one who likes the kind of that end of things. And
well, the Kirby's have gotten us into Cobra Kai. If anybody saw Karate Kid, go watch Cobra Kai, because it's when they all grew up.
So sorry, I took us down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You know, I think for me, I'm walking away with the idea of, you know, how do I intentionally make sure to welcome that childlike spirit in my day, and how do I help others who might want that too. So that's something I'm taking away this week. Any other takeaways?
Well, I think in our society we have people who are thought of not necessarily as childlike, but lower in the hierarchy of life. You know, marginalized people, some low income, homeless, uneducated,
Wrong color.
you know, race issues, sexual orientation, but I think mostly of people that are, I mean, for me, I think mostly of people who are low income, homeless, that kind of thing. And I think Jesus is saying those people are of value and in his kingdom, and they need to be honored and recognized and valued. I think of that word, valued.
Oh, I think that's so, you know, and I appreciate, Carly, that you're taking it to an economic sense, because I really do think, you know, if you step back and look at how much economic language we use in all of our lives, you know, we talk when we hang out with friends, we're spending time. When we talk about our bank accounts, we talk about our net worth and how much we're worth. You know, these are things that economics is so at the core of how we've organized our society, that it really is easy to say, well, who is the greatest? You know, it's the ones with the highest worth. What's the best movie? Well, what was the highest grossing movie? What was the, you know, I mean, it's so easy. Who's the best friend? Well, the one we spend the most time with, and the one who we've decided that it's the most valuable, you know what I mean? Like, we use all this language in there. And so for folks who find themselves literally economically poor, how do we make sure that that there is clear that they do not lack for any value in God's eyes or in our eyes as followers of Jesus? Yeah, so how do we send that other message, and how do we live that other message? Yeah.
Good point.
My dad, by the way, it's really funny. He's hopefully transitioning out of, he's kind of burnt out on work. He's been at UNMC for decades and has been a nursing home administrator and all this fancy stuff. And he really wants to, Lyle, you'll get a kick out of this. Well, and Dan, I guess you know my dad a little bit too, but from Men's Breakfast. But he's learning how to drive a forklift. He wants to go drive a forklift somewhere. He really loves doing that. So he's gonna see if he can transition out of university administration into forklifting part-time. So yeah, so you know, I think it's important and to think about, you know, who are we friends with? Do we have, because it's really easy to fall into a line of communities of affluence, you know, or that we pocket our, so I think that's great. That's really good awareness, Carly. Oh, that silly button, Lyle. We're still not hearing. We're trying to unmute.
Yep.
It's appropriate. This is how we talk.
Yes.
There you go.
You
There
got
go. Oh, Lyle.
You had it, Lyle.
There you go.
Am I muted now?
No,
No,
no, we can hear you.
your stumbling block is gone.
3 years before I retired, I remember saying ever so often, you know, every day, welcome to Walmart is looking more and more attractive to
I love that.
and that's kind of almost what I did. But you get tired of the same thing all the time. And you, well, it's like when I was teaching, after you teach the same class 5 periods in a row, you wonder why those last period kids are so dumb they don't know it, because you haven't told them that yet. So you have to get ready to get rid of some of that luggage and go on and do something else in your life. And I admire your dad for doing that. I don't know whether I want to operate a forklift. I'd probably poke it through the wall of something, but anyway, I understand what he means.
That's okay. He wouldn't have done at all good in real estate. So
My career was like back when I first moved from field claims into the regional office, and I was used to being out among people, talking with people and everything else. And so I started then work part-time at May just so that I had contact with people, not sitting at a desk looking at a computer all the time. And then I transitioned into real estate, and I only did that for about 2 years until my mother got so bad we had to put her in a nursing home, and I found myself going to the nursing home about every weekend up in Stromsburg. And so I just decided there's no sense in me trying to have open houses and so forth. So I put my license on hold, and I've never brought it back out of retirement. So it's gone now. I'd have to go back to school again to get back to real estate. So 30 years after that, I mean, I did try real estate for a while I was working at State Farm, but yeah, I enjoyed it because to me, it wasn't selling. I couldn't sell insurance, but I could sell real estate because I worked with young people buying their first house, and I felt like I was teaching them what to look for and what not to look for and things like that, more so than when it got to the point where I had written the contract. Then it was pure hell because trying to hold the deal together because they didn't qualify for their loan or something like that. And I envy these people today that just turn it over to the office and they're done with it once they get through selling the house. So anyway, any job, if you're in it too long, brittle.
yeah, how do we continue?
I don't mean ministry.
No, yeah, I think you're right. How do you continue to be renewed in your sense of vocation, no matter what that is? I think that's great. That's good. That's something that my clergy colleagues and we always talk about, that kind of stuff. I think that's a really important thing. Well, this has been a really, really rich conversation. I want to honor our time as much as possible. Next week, we'll continue in Matthew chapter 18. There's a lot going on here. So yeah, so maybe we'll finish it up. We'll see. But is somebody willing to close us out with a little prayer?
I will.
Thanks.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you once again for this time together and just to look into your word and take it apart and learn from it. And we thank you for Steve's guidance and just giving him the wisdom to lead us to discover your word. And Father, we thank you for the rain, even though it scared the dogs. We appreciate the rain because we needed it so badly. And we just thank you for the cooler weather. Father, we just pray that we would take these words and truly apply them to our lives and find the stumbling blocks in our lives, not only for other people, but for ourselves. And then Father, give us the strength to do something about those stumbling blocks, and just to always strive for you, and to glorify you in our lives and in the lives of other people. And we just pray for safety as we go into this crazy world we live in right now, and just keep us mindful of other people in our lives and other people that we touch. And we just thank you, and we pray this in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you all for a wonderful day, and we'll hopefully see you next week, and maybe even Sunday. Bye.